All right, welcome everyone to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm your host, Will Christensen, and I have Daniel, and it's Boufford, right?
Yep. Before accent on the full.
Daniel Boufford. So I've got Daniel Boufford here with me, and I am super excited to have you, Daniel. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Daniel, what do you do right now?
So right now, I'm an Amazon seller, but I'd like to think I'm a little more than just an Amazon seller because we now sell on Walmart and eBay and Amazon Canada and do a little wholesale. But started my journey, so many others selling products on Amazon. Now it's, I'd say I'm a medium sized seller. The last 2 years, done, 12 to 15 million of revenue each year. And, have a staff of about 10 to 12 people. So that's my full-time gig. And then on top of that, I started a prep center in late 2022 and kind of split between those two things right now.
All right, so what you're saying is you have basically gone in and not only taken a step beyond being an Amazon seller, but you've actually dabbled in a couple of these other services. I think the exciting part for me here, and one of the reasons, as we were talking even before we started recording, even a couple of months ago, one of the reasons why I think you're going to be a fantastic guest for us is most of those who have monetized mental capital that have been on the show already, it was something they did, many years ago. That's when they began their process of, productizing a service or creating a course or doing a prep center, right? That's when they thought, oh, I can monetize this knowledge. And so I'm excited that you're like still in the thick of selling, because I think you'll be able to relate to a lot of these e-commerce sellers that are diving in.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about how you became an entrepreneur. Like what got you into this?
Yeah. I think by nature, I've always just wanted to work for myself. I was fired from my high school job that I had and kind of just grew a disdain for, having to do what someone else tells me to do all the time. And out of sheer arrogance too, I think that a lot of the times I felt like I was smarter than the person giving me the orders or disagreed with them and thought I could do a better job than they could do. And, I just think just by nature, I was kind of destined to at least work for myself, if not become an entrepreneur and try to build something. And my siblings are the same way. My dad's kind of the same way. So I guess it runs in the family a little bit. So yeah, after, I was fired from my high school job, I did go to college and I took a, non-standard path there. I went to a pretty good school, to Cornell. So you can, you get a decent job out of there, of course. But I actually fell into online poker, fell into that world in college. And there was a one of the best online poker players in the world who went to college with me, and he had a training website. And speaking of monetizing mental capital, that's a perfect example. He created a training website where he would film himself playing poker, and it was a subscription website. Here's how to play winning poker online. And I met the guy and just kind of became obsessed with it. And I wasn't like poor growing up or anything, but I had no extra money or anything. I was working at the hotel on campus 30 hours a week on top of classes and for like $6 an hour plus tips. And so the concept of making a ton of money playing online poker was really attractive to me. So anyway, college, I just played like all my spare time. My grades were really great the first 2 years, and then they kind of took a little dip down. And I got at poker, the worse my grades got, I guess. But yeah, and I graduated in 2009. The job market was terrible. It was after, that 2008 recession. So
Man, that was a crazy year to get out into the job market. I like massive collapse.
for sure. So a lot of my friends went into like, investment banking jobs and all that, fancy finance type stuff. And, I was thinking of going that road myself, but I was at the point in poker where I was actually making a few thousand a month online, and like right at the cusp of like, oh, I might be able to actually make like a decent career out of this. So I just decided to take a leap of faith, and I moved to Argentina with a good friend of mine from college, where the cost of living was like, 10% of what it is in the States. So I was like, well, at least the cost of living will be really low. If I have some like losing months or really, down months, I'll be able to survive. And so I just went down there with not really that much of a bankroll. I had like maybe 10,000 in my online poker account. And I was like, let's just try and make this happen. And For a year down there, I got progressively better. There were other online poker players from all around the world living down there. We learned from each other. I really improved that year. And then all of a sudden I was making like probably 15, 20 grand a month when I was 22 and on top of the world. And then I moved back to the States, played professionally one more year until I was like 23, 24. And then all the online poker sites in the States got shut down by the federal government. And the sites themselves, their bank accounts were seized. And as a result, all the player funds were seized
Oh
inadvertently
man.
by the government, but all my funds were locked up. So then I was like, wow, I need to do something else here. And like basically lost everything overnight.
Oh,
Yeah. So that was painful, but I got a taste of just the freedom of working for yourself completely. And that
yeah.
my resume kind of is a little screwed up at this point. Like,
How many years of online poker did you have at that point?
it was 2 full years after college. So age 20, 24, kind of critical years for like starting your career if you want to go the corporate path. So I was like, I don't even know if I can get a banking job anymore with this resume. And it's competitive to get a job like that.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, what am I going to do now? And then I fell back on, what I did over the summer each college, which is rent apartments. I was a real estate agent in the Boston area. And I'm like, you know what? I could probably go back to that. I did pretty well. It was all commission based. You get out of it what you put into it type of thing. I've always been attracted to those like merit based type of jobs where,
Yeah.
results are dependent on your effort and your expertise. So poker's like that, real estate agencies like that, and Amazon is also like that. So I've always thrived in those types of environments. But yeah, fast forward, I'm a real estate agent in the New York City area. I do that for like maybe another 7 or 8 years. Do okay, sell some homes, sell some commercial properties, but just kind of getting burnt out of being like an agent and some of the personalities you have to deal with, and you're always just kind of getting jerked around by people. I was like just getting tired of it.
Lots of butt kissing.
Yeah, exactly. This just isn't me. And like, I saw them like the type of person you have to be the most successful real estate agent. And it's just like very flashy, good looking, like $3,000 suits at all the, greatest parties, kissing ass. Yeah. It's just like, this is not me. It's not who I want to be. So at that point, I was like maybe 30 years old. This is, 6 years ago. So I'm just looking at YouTube, like, passive income ideas or business ideas, like just, side hustle ideas, anything to like spark an interest. And I came across Amazon FBA. I saw some people that were successful in private label. I saw some early like Jungle Scout videos, like here's how you sell a product on Amazon private label. It was intriguing to me. So I just decided to, give it a shot. And I actually skipped over private label. I found some arbitrage videos. I'm like, oh, this is a really low stakes way to do it. I'll just buy 10 of something at a retail store, throw it on Amazon, see if it works. And that's what I did. I went into like a Target or something with a scanning app on a shelf, and I just picked up like a box of stuff and, made the seller account, sent some stuff in. I'm like, wow, that all sold pretty quick, like faster than I thought. So then I bought a few different things, and then I had within, I don't know, 4 or 6 months, my whole apartment was filled with various things on my floor, my kitchen table, my couch, like just like, yeah, it was like an addiction. I was just like kind of obsessed with it and, making a couple grand a month on the side. And then, things just kept going well. So I'm like, I want to try and scale this. So then I rented a small warehouse space, like only 500 feet, just essentially a room. Every year thereafter, I basically kept doubling in size, moved to 1,000 feet, then 2,000, then 5,000, then 10,000. And now I've got like 26,000 feet between my two warehouses and just running it up in Amazon. And, the first couple of years was just like a solo show. And then I hired a warehouse guy to help me with prep, and then a second one, and then a third one, and then a buyer. And then now I have, about 12 different employees. And
I love it.
yeah, next thing you know, here I am. It's been like kind of a whirlwind since I started, but
Yeah.
it's been awesome. I love selling on Amazon, and it's exciting. And yeah,
What year was it that you like very first looked at those arbitrage videos?
probably 2017, I want to say. So I think I'm about 7. Yeah, this is
Back in
years.
the golden years when it was wild, wild west and
Yeah,
crap just flew off the shelves.
yeah, yeah.
Love it. And it's interesting to see how many individuals who have made it successful in that category, that time period, are the ones who are evolving into the service businesses and monetizing mental capital. That's the trend that I'm seeing across these different individuals that I'm interviewing. One question I have for you, as you consider your journey and you consider, where you got in. I love that this started with online poker. I think that's freaking awesome. I'm just out of curiosity, what skills did you walk away? I mean, you did this full time essentially, right? Like you were essentially paying or playing, 8 hours a day kind of thing, or was it like
Yeah, my schedule is kind of nighttime because that's when, most of the recreational players would come on. So I'd have kind of a late schedule, like 6 p.m. to, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever, and
yeah,
sleep late. But yeah, roughly, 40 hours a week of playing time. Yeah.
40 hours a week? And what skills do you think you walked away with there that you then later began to come and say, you know what? I learned this in my online poker playing and it just served me the whole time.
Yeah, there are actually a couple of things I can think of. One is like, poker is just about exploiting small little edges again and again and again. Like a lot of people, they think poker player, they think it's like this really like sexy view of a poker player where like you're reading into someone's soul, like, oh, they're bluffing. And I just know I'm seeing the glimmer in their eyes. And I just like there's a small element of that, but mostly it's about like just knowing probabilities and statistics and knowing if someone's playing too many hands or not enough hands or calling too many hands or folding too many hands and like how to exploit those small things. Yeah. And
Mm,
those small things over time, over thousands or hundreds of thousands of hands of poker, that's what really makes you your money. It's kind of like a lot of little boring exploitations rather than like, you know,
the
the
big
one
wins.
where you like,
That
yeah,
sounds
just,
like life.
yeah, exactly. It's like poker is very romanticized in that way,
Just like
but then,
entrepreneurship.
yeah, as is entrepreneurship, exactly. You just see like the wins and like the glorious moments, but it's kind of the same principle with Amazon, and not everyone can see that. Like the power of wholesale. It's like, okay, this one SKU makes me $1 and it sells 100 times a month. Like a lot of people would sneeze at $100 a month. They're like, oh, I can't like get rich off that. But multiply that by 12, and then it's $1,200 a year. Then find 100 of those SKUs, then find 1,000 of those SKUs, and like it's just kind of the accumulation of like small little pieces of profit
Mm,
rather than like the one magic product, number one bestseller that's going to make you $20 million in a year or something, but like,
love it.
sure, it can exist, but it's mostly the boring, small, little everyday edges.
So
Um,
as you consider this journey, as you consider the entire journey, when was the first time that you went out and said, you know what? This is mental capital I think I can monetize. You mentioned, I had a college roommate or a college friend who he was already monetizing his mental capital.
right.
Did you ever decide to do similar things? What was the first time you remember monetizing your mental capital? Or was it the gambling? Was that what you
Yeah, that
the
is monetizing mental capital in a way. Yeah. So I guess you could call it that. And yeah, since then, I mean, I basically kind of just worked for myself until, a couple of years ago when I decided to monetize my knowledge of Amazon by starting Prep Center, which, I thought at the time it was going to be like very similar to Amazon selling, but it couldn't be further than the truth. Like it's in the Amazon industry, but it's a service based business and you have customers and you have expectations and there's a lot more customer service. But I decided to monetize it in that I know exactly what goes into having to prep Amazon products. So I'm like,
what helped you decide? So one of the questions we like to explore at this point in the podcast is what helped you explore and decide which not I mean you have amassed an immense amount of knowledge, right? Like hearing your story, clear back from when you were in college and the collapse from the 2008 stuff all the way through with the gambling, and then you've got real estate knowledge in there that you've thrown in. Like you've got a ton of knowledge across all of this. Now as you're a successful business owner and you're looking to leverage and create something new, a knowledge-based product that's not associated with physical goods on the shelves, why did you decide, you know what? I'm going to do this prep center thing. This is the service I'm going to provide versus other services that you could have provided.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, the reason I wanted to diversify away from Amazon selling is, as we all know, Amazon has an immense amount of power and they set the rules, and even mega sellers can go down at, the blink of an eye. And then all of a sudden they're laying off 100 people or something, everyone's heard those horror stories.
Yep.
Everyone has a healthy fear of Amazon. So in the back of my head, no matter how well I did in a given year, I always have this, creeping feeling that, like, it's all a house of cards. And then one wrong move from my business or one change from Amazon, it all comes tumbling down. So despite, it cash flowing pretty well right now, yeah, I know that's all somewhat subject to change. And, you're relying on one platform who's, it's all subject to change. And I've seen businesses just get tossed, back and forth. It's like a rough ocean out there. So I think me and a lot of other sizable Amazon sellers would like to diversify away from just selling into, yeah, some sort of ancillary thing where they have the knowledge and then they can monetize that quickly. So for me, there are two things I was thinking about. One was the prep center and another is, a course and a community and information product. And I still am considering that as well. But at first I started to explore the prep center because I was paying a prep center myself about $10,000 a month to prep my products. I still do a little bit of online arbitrage, and I'm not in a tax-free state. However, I have New Hampshire right next to me in Massachusetts, which is. So I was thinking I could just start my own thing, just rent a little space and pay myself essentially and be my own customer. And
Pay myself 10 grand a month
yeah,
to,
exactly. It's like,
so
that's,
instead of paying that, I can figure this out for 10 grand a month.
exactly.
Man, talk about an awesome first customer, man.
Yeah, exactly. And a couple other, big arbitrage sellers that I'm very close with, they're like, oh yeah, we'll send our stuff to you. Like, it's you for sure. We'll give you the business. So I had like a pretty strong base of customers right off the bat. And then
And when you say arbitrage, do you mean like wholesale or do you mean like true arbitrage?
true online arbitrage. So like buying from a retailer on clearance, like, Walmart has a bunch of toys on clearance. You order it to New Hampshire and then that way you don't pay sales tax. And then, you pay the prep center X dollars per unit to
To
prep
get
and
it
ship.
up online.
Yeah. So a lot of our customers at the prep center are arbitragers, true arbitragers, like either dropping stuff off from hauls from stores or just ordering a bunch of stuff online, avoiding the sales tax by sending it to New Hampshire. And then we get it to Amazon for them.
Interesting. And so if they're, I mean, are they buying like pallets from UPS as well? Or is it mostly just clearance items?
Yeah, it's mostly not just clearance items, but also just items on sale generally. And then, I mean, it's crazy. There's some items that just retail price on one website. You can buy it at retail and then sell it for double on Amazon just because people just don't realize. So there's a lot of that, from major big box retailers, all sorts of Walmart and Target boxes and sporting goods stores and beauty stores, Sephora, Ulta, all that type of stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of boxes coming in from all those retailers.
Interesting. Roughly how many different sellers do you have bringing you stuff to the prep center at this point? Started with just you and a couple of buddies, it sounds like, a couple of different, your friends.
Yeah, we started with just a few of us and then, we're up to like about 50 customers. And the cool thing is I haven't really had to market. So one thing I did to kind of monetize the mental capital, I have an Instagram that I'm fairly active on and built a decent following. And all I've had to do so far for marketing was just say, hey, I started a prep center. So you want to be a customer, send me a message. And, I've spent $0 on marketing, which is pretty cool.
Well, that's about an audience, right? You monetized your mental capital around creating an opportunity. So let's say that I'm a seller and I want to get started on creating an audience like that. What did you do to build up a following? And how big's the following on Instagram?
It's not huge by any means, but it's close to 6,000 followers and
That's awesome.
yeah, and they're quality followers. Like everyone's really engaged. Like, there's a lot of like fake followers out there, fake likes and all that stuff. Like my stuff is all completely authentic. So I have like a quality following, I'd say, even though
Nice. Well, yeah. I mean, just rough numbers. What's so you started with 10 grand a month because you started paying yourself what your business was going. How's it doing now?
So 23 was our first year of business operating, and we did about 500K revenue. And,
Awesome.
I expect that to grow. Getting the customers is actually the easy part. Throughout the year, it's just been like building systems that don't break
Infrastructure.
and people. That's like the harder part of the whole thing.
Interesting. So systems that don't break in people. Go into that for me a little bit. What's that look like for you?
So prep is, again, I thought it was gonna be walk in the park because like, oh, I know how to sell on Amazon. I prep my products. I can do it for anyone else. But when you're doing it for 50 people, the complexity like multiplies like crazy because then all of a sudden you have to like deal with like package sorting and like where to store the stuff and organize the stuff. And then whose store do you prep with what priority level and how frequently do you do it? And then what happens when they don't do the data entry right? And what happens if there's a misship or something's damaged? And like, there's all sorts of products or problems that can occur and complexity. So like creating SOPs for all that type of stuff has been ultimately more complex than my Amazon selling business, which, I didn't anticipate going into it, but
Do you think it's the human element, or what is it about the? I mean, because the interesting thing about this service-based business is it does still have a physical aspect to it. You're selling a service, but there is a physical aspect to it, which I think is fascinating because it's like a service-based physical business in many ways. Like I mean, you got consultants out there who literally all they do is talk to people online, and there really isn't a lot of what's there. And I think you found an interesting mix of there's physical products involved, but it's a service you're selling. And so, do you think that's what introduced the complexity? What do you think made it hard?
yeah, I think so. And there's a lot to learn, like in the Amazon world, like, for a warehouse employee to like understand Seller Central and understand the softwares that go on top of that, like an inventory lab or, we have our own prep software called Prep Ship Hub. We didn't make it, but, it's out there for prep centers. And, there's just a lot of like different things for them to know. And it's really tough to hire someone for an entry level position and expect them to work in a warehouse quickly and have a ton of attention to details like, oh, this is lipstick shade 003 and this is lipstick shade 002. Don't mix those up, even though they look exactly the same. And then, shipments are getting split up all over the place. And then, then learning the software and having a ton of attention to detail there is like, I found that it's kind of a tough mix of skills to like have everyone nail like at an entry level. So I think my job as the owner is to make those processes as clear as possible and repeatable as possible. So like someone can come in and learn what the heck's going on within, a week or so.
Yeah,
Still working on that.
I bet. So SOPs, what piece of advice would you give for someone who's in the middle of that right now, trying to figure out SOPs? What do you wish you had known when you had begun that part of the SOP journey?
Just like brain dump at first. Like, I think a lot of people don't even get started because they're like, oh, but what if this happens? What if that happens? And like, I found that just getting started with something, like just getting it on paper and then,
Even if it's just voice typing it into your phone or
yeah,
something.
something very basic. And then like, then you can deal with like the contingency plans and then, and I would also have like someone test it out. Like, you can stand next to the person and be like, all right, now do this.
Here's the piece of paper. I'm gonna shut up and watch you.
Exactly.
And when you do something that I didn't mean, I'm like, ah, crap. I told him to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich, but I forgot to tell him to take the freaking lid off the peanut butter. And I'll never forget like that school in school. They were like, all right, we're gonna write up a piece of paper with how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So we all wrote it up and then we handed it to our teacher. And then she stood in front of the class and she proceeded to follow our directions exactly. And she did like 10 of them. And it was
Yeah.
a class of like
I'll be
26. And
thankful they're
none of us outlined it to the point where we actually got a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it was hilarious, the crap that, like, there was peanut butter smeared on the desk. There was, I mean, it was crazy, all this stuff. Like, it just wasn't happening. We weren't getting, and the people who were like, it was their paper, they're like, no, like, you were supposed to. And she said, it's not written down here, so I'm not doing it. And like, just helping us kind of identify that whole process of like taking a step out and moving it there. So I love that what you said, like give them something and then watch it fail, watch and figure out what you need to shift.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yep.
What else? Any other ideas around SOP building that are you're like, oh my gosh, this could be huge?
Man, I wish I could say I'm amazing at this, but it's kind of interesting to hear from the perspective of someone struggling with it. But yeah, that's one thing that's helped me.
Any softwares or books that you've read that you were like, oh man, this taking this approach, or things that you learned in your Amazon business that you brought over in your process of doing SOP work?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer other than like, I'm in the beginning of my journey of SOPs, but it's basically been writing them out, testing them with a person, refining them, and then, that's the process. And maybe a good piece of advice is if you're not great at it, find someone who can do it, you know? Like,
That's a fantastic piece of
yeah,
advice. So,
yeah,
one thing you discovered is that you shouldn't probably be the one to write every SOP.
right, right.
You
Yeah,
should be finding somebody who's actually better at whatever. I think that's a hard lesson to learn as an entrepreneur. I, for one, have made that mistake where I'm like, no, I got to do it. Like, I got to do it first, and then I got to delegate it to somebody. No, sometimes it's better to delegate first.
right, for
Any
sure.
any examples coming to mind? I know for me, like deep level marketing or high level sales have been two things for me that have been like, you really should be looking for an expert here to help you
Yeah,
identify or
absolutely.
look at that kind of stuff. Anything coming out for
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my selling business, I mean, for whatever reason, I have some sort of mental block with like marketing. It's just like I'm really smart in a lot of areas, but then when it comes to like marketing or getting myself out there, I'm just like, I want nothing to do with it. So for like pay-per-click advertising, we just hired an agency, which is like kind of an example of just
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. Delegate it.
Yeah. Up until this point in my business, like I've had my hand in everything. And over the last year, I've really tried to like take my hand out of things. And I actually recently hired a COO and, you know, yeah,
That, like, hats off to you, my friend. That is in a service business, and that's the type of business I've built before. I haven't built an Amazon business before.
right.
In a service business, when you get to the point where you can hire, and don't be surprised if you have to fire that one and get a new one, but the fact that you made it to the place where you actually, one, could afford the COO, and two, you like successfully pulled the trigger, dude, Daniel, hats off to you. Every single monetizer of mental capital who's been on this podcast before would literally be like, nice job, dude.
Nice.
Because that's that moment where you're like, you know what? I don't have to be in charge of every single one of these processes or every single one of these people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And up until this point, I've kind of like held everyone's hand through every single thing. And, it's exhausted me over the years. And so now I've hired someone with an MBA. It's just like, all right, you're a smart guy. And my new directives to you are going to be like, this is the result I want to achieve in plain English. Like, just get it done. And like,
And I'll remove roadblocks, but you better be the one who's you better have tried a lot of things before you bring me a roadblock.
right, right,
I
exactly.
love
So
it.
I'm starting to experiment with that. And, hopefully it's a game changer. And then I'll probably add that to the prep center as well. I do have a great manager there who I've put more and more and more on. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people early in their business journeys, like they try to control every little thing and they don't quite trust people to do things right. Like I was scared to even hire someone to prep my Amazon products and like because I was terrified that they would label the product wrong and then send 100 of the product with the wrong label on it, and then it would cost me thousands of dollars. It's like
Yeah.
you have to get over that fear. And
So what'd you do to get over it?
there's- people are more capable than you think they are, like in general, until proven otherwise. Like just try and trust them with some things and review what they do, obviously refine, improve. They can learn from their mistakes, but people are pretty good at doing stuff if you let them. So
Hey,
um,
that honestly, if we're talking like hacks and like just allowing people to get in there, I talk a lot about automate, delegate, eliminate in my career. That's just been a big part of who I am. And that delegate piece, dude, it is so hard to let go. What did you do because it's hard? What are some things that you've done to try to help you let go when it was difficult to do so?
yeah, like I kind of have like a review period. Like whenever we try something new, or if I like tell an employee, like, let's try this. And then like, they'll give it a shot and then I'll review it with them and be like, what worked, what didn't, let's change it around. And then, they do it again, then I'll review it again until it works. And then I just like, okay, it works now. I'll let them do it. And it's the same with any process. Like, let's say, you know, I was like booking all the freight shipments for my Amazon business. And I'm like, oh, I hope I could have someone else do that, but I don't want them to enter in the wrong pallet height or pallet weight or whatever. So one way that I've like bridged the gap is like, all right, the first 5 times you do this, like, let me know before you
Bring it to
click
me.
submit and let me just make sure
Come
it's
tap me on the shoulder. I'm going to come look and make sure that that pallet height looks correct.
yeah, yeah, and just read through everything or even have them explain to me. I like to have my employees like talk out loud to me, like what they're doing and why they're doing it. And, so I really trust that they understand.
Have you read Turn the Ship Around?
I have not, but I will write that one down.
So Turn the Ship Around is a book, and I'm actually really impressed that you did the speak out loud thing without having picked that up from somebody else. He's a guy in the Navy. He's submarine captain, and he was trying to get more and more off of his plate and turn these followers into leaders. He wanted them to really up their performance and dig in and do a lot of different things that way. And they were making a turn in the submarine, and he could see the dials and look at all the stuff, and he kind of knew the waters. He had studied the charts, and he was like, man, if this guy doesn't turn in like 2 seconds here, we're gonna bottom out. And he ended up jumping in and overwrote the guy, like, hey, we need to turn right now. And so like he essentially overrode what his subordinate was going to do. And later when he talked to him about it, he could see that he had made a huge mistake. He had ruined the employees or the subordinate's trust. He had seen the subordinate wasn't happy with this whole situation, and they chatted about it as a leadership team and came up with this idea of talk out loud or think out loud. And so it had the guy who was there said, okay, we are at this degree and we're coming up on here and I'm about to hit the whatever, but I'm waiting for this because of such and such and such and such. The guy who knew about it, he didn't know about that extra piece of information about waiting for such and such and such and such. So his subordinate actually knew more than he did about what was going on, and his thought process was solid. So had he been thinking out loud, well, then there would have been no need for the owner to get worried and correct.
Right.
And so that was kind of one of their strategies, was think out loud. So yeah, Turn the Ship Around. Fantastic book. And I think it's so cool that you
Yeah, I
did the
guess
same
it's
thing.
like kind of the same thing. And it kind of puts me at ease. Like when I see someone using a software for the first time, like, my Amazon shipping software, I tell them like, take me through every click and like why you're clicking it and what this button does and like what you're doing next. And yeah, I think it helps them to say it out loud because they're like, oh, this is why I'm doing this in this order. And then it also helps the person supervising feel comfortable that, because you can't read their mind as they're making clicks and
Yeah.
stuff.
One just hack that I'll share from a technology standpoint, I don't know if you already do this, but if you use something like Loom, you can actually have them record their screen while they're clicking around and talking through stuff, and then you can use that as your standard operating procedure later. So Loom just records your screen, and the other cool part about Loom is it creates a transcript, which is awesome, and you could totally feed that transcript into something like ChatGPT-4 and say, make me a standard operating procedure that I can put in an employee handbook, and then all somebody has to do is take some screenshots from the video, and you have like a fully documented, like pristine standard operating procedure.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm starting to use Loom a lot, actually. Pretty much all of the things I tell people to do are Loom videos now. It's like, I don't even have to talk to them in person anymore.
Yeah, no, Loom is such a powerful tool. I got converted to it by our co-founder, Nan. I had used it before, but I hated their free plan because I was like, man, it needs to give me more. And he eventually was like, you know what, Will, we're just going to buy it. And I kid you not, I probably record 5 to 6 Loom videos a day. And some of them in like 10 to 15 minute varieties and some in short varieties. And it's just amazing how valuable it is to be able to talk at my screen and have my screen be recorded to explain what's going on to somebody else.
For sure. Especially like clicking sequences or just like anything like a little bit complicated. It's just so much easier. It's, you just see a screen and see someone talking and clicking the screen.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
So that's a fantastic hack. As we get in here and we're kind of rounding out the podcast now, any other major roadblocks that you've seen over the last year in building this service-based business that you were like, man, that was rough?
Honestly, it's been like just managing people and, I'm just in a place where the labor market's just kind of tough. I've had to let go, probably 7 of the first 10 to 12 people I hired. And,
Oh,
I have a decent crew now, but it's been a lot of drama with that. But other than that, like, yeah, and it's just learning what the heck I'm doing. It's like the prep center is basically a logistics business. So
yeah.
like a few months in, I'm like, I actually have no frigging clue, like how to run a logistics business.
Did you go
You know,
find a consultant that could help you
I
consider some
thought
of that?
about it. I actually did. Yeah. I thought about like a warehouse optimization consultant and, even reached out to a couple prep centers. I'm like, would you come for a week for like 10 grand and just like show me exactly what to do? And, no one was interested in doing that because I was a competitor. So it's like,
Ah,
figure this out one step at a time. And that's actually been kind of the funnest part too. It's like these little, you're like, this little thing is now figured out for everyone. And like,
any listeners that happen to be logistic experts who maybe aren't competitors, because I think there are some logistics experts that aren't necessarily competing with you for what you're doing, reach out to Daniel. He, at the end of the podcast episode, he's going to tell us his contact information. One other thing is I'll introduce you to a good friend of mine. His name's James. So when we get to the end of the podcast here, remind me to introduce you. He's the guy who organizes the show AMZ United.
oh, okay.
It's
Yeah. James. I actually know James. Yeah. He's actually one of the guys I chat with about logistics stuff. So yeah, he's
interesting.
all in on it. And, yeah.
James is a sharp dude. He's got some prep stuff that he does. James McConnell. I'd be curious to hear if he feels like you're as big a competitor. He feels like he's in a different category for me.
Yeah, he
So
is. He does, I believe, wholesale prep primarily in Texas, and I'm doing arbitrage. So yeah, our customer base is completely different. So
so he may be the kind of person, 10 grand might be enough to get him to come out and hang out for a
exactly.
while.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
well, I love that. Okay, so imagine for a moment that I handed you a cell phone and you're looking at it and you're like, dude, this is a brick, dude. Why are you giving me this cell phone? And you're like, this cell phone looks like it's from like 2000. I was like, it actually is from 2000 and it can ring you back then. Right as you're graduating, right as you're beginning to get into that online poker stuff, right as you're beginning. What would you call and tell him about monetizing mental capital? What would you call and tell him like, hey, dude, stay away from online poker, or maybe go all in on online poker, but be aware it's gonna end. Beyond that, what would you tell him about monetizing mental capital to up level his ability?
I would say, go all in on the community, and I used to view everyone and everything as kind of a competitor in the same space, and I've realized over the years that actually networking and like talking to a so-called competitor has been some of the best things that have ever happened in business, like little tips that you can offer on how to do something that they may not have known and vice versa. And, I firmly believe we're all like better together in a way. It's like, obviously there's exception to that rule. If you're an Apple executive, you don't go to Samsung and say, oh, here's our new design for like our next phone. Like I get there's limitations to it, but there's certain industries, and Amazon's certainly one, where the ocean is absolutely gigantic and everyone's
Yeah.
just trying to get a sliver or a like tiny
Yep.
little bit. And in instances like that, I think that banding together, you're actually stronger than trying to hide and
Figure it out
withhold.
on your own.
And, the benefits are twofold too. Like me becoming like, at least a little bit known in the Amazon community, it opens up so many other opportunities too.
I mean, look at your prep center. No
Yeah.
marketing, just using your Instagram account. That's freaking awesome.
Right, right, for sure. So I think I was a
Into the
little more
networking.
guarded in the past, and then I've just kind of opened up over the years, and just more good things have happened. A lot of positive things poured in as I became more open myself. So
Okay, Daniel, we're to the end of our episode here, and we do two things at the end of our episode. One, I'm going to give you the opportunity here to pretend that you stepped into an elevator, and the guy standing next to you is like, "Yeah, I do 7 figures in arbitrage, and I hate my prep center." So that's what he says to you, and so you got 60 seconds to like. He's gonna walk out of the elevator in 60 seconds. So you got 60 seconds to convince him that he should be, what's your business card, that kind of thing. So you're gonna give us that. Right after that, I want you to give me any tips, tricks, hacks, or books that you have come across in the last year that have helped you in business, either in general or in monetizing your mental capital. So anything that comes to mind, tips, tricks, hacks, or books. And so we're going to kind of throw that one into your subconscious while for 60 seconds, you step into the elevator and here's this 7-figure arbitrager.
All right, cool.
Ready, go.
First one, the layup, I'd say, because, I'm the perfect guy to answer this question. So I basically tell them, yeah, most prep centers out there really do suck. And I was a former customer of several of them myself. And for me, at least, the communication was awful. The turnaround times were awful. So I set out to start my own prep center to basically solve all the problems that I experienced as a customer. And I would then proceed to ask them, what don't you like about your prep center? And then, be XYZ, probably the same types of things. I can't reach anybody. Things are inaccurate. I have no visibility into my inventory. It's taking too long. I don't trust them. And I would say, here's my business card, Epic Prep. I'm in the unique position of being a large volume seller who has used prep centers, and on the other side, prep center myself. So I believe I can solve many of those problems.
That's time. Perfect. Good job, sir. You were right. That was a layup. All right. Tips, tricks, hacks, or books that you have used or come across over the last year that you feel like have changed some of what you've been looking at.
I'm reading a book right now called The Great CEO Within. It's a pretty short book, but it's just condensed, really, really awesome practical tips for CEOs. And it's written by someone who exited for like 9 figures, and he's a Silicon Valley VC, ultra qualified to be writing about it. And that one has just a lot of good golden nuggets in it. And one thing I implemented from the very first chapter, and I'm not even all the way through it, but he recommended getting to inbox zero and how to do that. He recommended an email extension called Superhuman, which is basically a layer on top of Gmail. And that's actually helped me address all of my emails. So I can either push things to later dates that I just realistically know I'm not going to get to today and set the date, follow up, or process the emails. And it also goes into split inboxes and stuff. And there's also like pre-made email snippets, like text snippets, where you just type in a keyboard shortcut. And then, so like, for instance, the Prep Center inquiry, I have a shortcut where it says, hey, first name, and it'll grab the first name from the contact form, and then a whole blurb about Epic Prep. And then it'll attach like the 4 files that I always attach every time: the customer agreement, pricing, yada, yada. And what used to like take me a bunch of time to type the same thing out 20 times a day, I just hit like semicolon, some letter or something, some keyboard shortcut. It's just bam, right there. And
nice.
I've instituted that same thing with my staff, like for account reach out, my buyer, rather than like typing out a slightly different email 50 times a day, he just has an email template and a keyboard shortcut. And he can even attach like marketing materials with one keystroke.
Is it The Great CEO Within? Is that the one?
Yeah, The Great CEO Within. That's a good one and pretty short read for anyone. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast are pressed for time, busy people. So, but I think that's a good one. So he introduced me to Inbox Zero, Superhuman, and that book also introduced me to Getting Things Done by
David Allen.
Yeah, so
such a freaking good book.
Yeah. So I'm not fully in that system, but I like the organizational process. I'm working on that, and yeah, just those 2 like nuggets from the first chapter have made me a more productive person. I'm always following up on the right times, like for a certain day.
Love it. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. How can users reach out to connect with you?
My Instagram handle is 1000 ASINs. So the number 1000 ASINS.
I love it.
And feel free to shoot me a message for really anything at all. I love talking to anyone, whether it's e-com or not, Amazon or not, just feel free to reach out.
Hey, love it. Well, I appreciate you, and looking forward to next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. And we'll talk soon.